Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monte Belmonte.
Later in the show, we'll talk to the folks from the first ever Runway 5K, turning the runway at the Northampton airport into a human racetrack, all to raise money for the Treehouse Foundation, who are re-envisioning foster care and community living in a neighborhood in East Hampton.
And Greenfield's Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster in Springfield, talking about a word that describes other words that was coined by the former head of NPR.
But joining us now are the hosts of Tumble Science Podcast for Kids, Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla.
Their latest episode is What's That Bird Song?, where we meet Trevor Attenberg, an environmental scientist and science communicator who learned to identify birds with sight, not with sight, but by sound alone.
Yes, without sight.
Without sight.
Marshall and Lindsay are bringing Tumble live to downtown Greenfield this Saturday, April 22nd with Meltdown, a day of free family fun at Hawks and Reed and outside on Court Square and the Greenfield Common. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We had a great time with you last time you were on the show, and we here at NEPM aired a bunch of your podcasts back to back. That
Yes.
was a fun experience for us, at least.
It was.
Yeah.
I actually got to listen to it on a drive elsewhere. I remembered. I was like, oh, yeah, they're going to teach me about polar bears.
For those
That's
who
what we do.
For those who aren't familiar with the podcast, tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into this world of communicating science to kids and their grown-ups, as we say. Lindsay?
Yeah, so I'm Lindsay Patterson, and I am one of the hosts. I'm also the writer of the show. And growing up, I really didn't like science. But when I became a journalist and got to interview a scientist, I discovered that everything I learned or thought I learned about science in school was wrong, and that science isn't just a set of facts, and especially it is a way of gathering evidence and learning about the world and solving problems that we all care about. And I wanted to share that with kids who maybe also were mistaken about science.
Yeah, I was one of those kids where I had to listen to the audiobook version of A Brief History of Time before I realized wow, I love astronomy. I just really hate math.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to do science to be interested in science.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Marshall? You're married into the podcast.
Yes, I married into the podcast. Lindsay came home one day and was like, let's make a science podcast for kids. And I was like, okay.
Like you do.
Yeah, but you provide all the great music and all the sound engineering
Yeah.
and the sound design of the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I don't engineer it. We have someone who's
cool.
professional at engineering. I have done, and you don't want me engineering your stuff. That's the bottom line.
Yes, but he also provides a lot of the humor. I was just looking at our reviews, and they're like, Marshall's jokes are so funny.
I am so funny.
Kind of like the dynamic we have here. Khalees is the smart one, and I'm the dumb one that asks dumb, funny questions. And that's kind of the podcast for the
That's
Tumble
how it
podcast.
works.
It's
It's the
more than
formula.
dumb, funny questions. It's just connections with the world we are trying to make, including the fact that we also like learning about science. So
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
really cool, especially birds are fascinating because they're tiny dinosaurs that we kept around and happened to fly.
Yeah, not all are tiny. Not all of them are tiny.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and the
Have you
big
ever
ones.
seen an ostrich face to face?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Back when I did segments for Connecting Point for WGBY television, which sadly does not exist anymore, I did a segment with emus at an emu farm that also no longer exists in Gill, and they were
Wait.
biting me live on
Yeah,
camera.
they're angry birds.
Yeah.
Angry Birds,
Not
the
just
real
a video
kind.
game, it's real.
I feel like there's a lot of angry birds in the bird kingdom. It's not just emus and sometimes ostriches, but geese. Geese are so mad most of
yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes ducks are really mad. Anyhow,
Birds in general
Yes.
are mad, which makes me think back in the time of the dinosaurs, was everyone just angry?
I think they're angry about what happened.
that's what I was going to
Yeah.
say.
Generational trauma there.
That's what I was going to say. It's all of our family, something happened.
All of my friends are
Was
dead.
it your fault?
It took science to tell us what that thing was. And Lindsay and Marshall, the hosts of Tumble, the science podcast for kids, and we're talking so much about birds because the most recent episode is What's That Bird Song?, where we meet Trevor Attenberg, who is visually impaired but is a birder and a scientist. Let's hear a little clip from the most recent episode.
I became quite interested in how different groupings of birds, like, say, the warblers and the thrushes and the sparrows, they tended to have specific qualities of their sounds that sort of would group them together.
Huh. So it's like how like pop music is different from rock, which is different from hip hop, which is different from country, rap, or so on.
Different from Gregorian chants.
Yes.
Your favorite genre.
Which bird species does Gregorian chant?
A lot of the blackbirds, the birds we call blackbirds, they tend to make these chipping sounds, especially when they fly. They chip, chip, chip. And that was really handy. Okay, so I'll go outside and I'll listen for these chipping sounds, and maybe it'd be one of these blackbirds.
Okay, so he'd listen for like the chip chip songs, and then he'd narrow it down to what blackbird it was.
Exactly.
That is Tumble Science Podcast with Marshall Escamilla and Lindsay Patterson talking with Trevor Attenberg, who taught himself these sonic cues from different types of birds. And the podcast is fascinating because he's kind of like mentally chronicled different categories of birds into their specific type of bird sounds, which is something I hadn't really ever thought about. Like, certain types of blackbirds have a very specific type of cadence and rhythm and melody. It's all musical. And for somebody who's visually impaired, that I'm assuming you who talked to him, it opened up his world.
Yeah, it absolutely did, because he told me he was always into nature, but always feared that he was missing out on everything because he couldn't see. So he had this drive to become an expert. And being able to recognize bird sounds, he had a, massive CD of 500 bird sounds, and actually started through Microsoft Encarta. That's what I found really interesting.
Yeah, it was fun for you to explain to the kids listening to the podcast what a CD-ROM is.
Yeah, CD-ROM. It used to be that songs had to be on plastic.
Yeah, but like being able to identify the birds within the recorded audio, then being able to go outside and recognize something that nobody else around him was picking up and know things that sighted people couldn't see, like really empowered him to keep learning and then transfer those skills into becoming a scientist and doing research and collecting data. And in fact, one of the interesting things we learn is that birding is really auditory. When you look up at a tree, like, it's really hard to find what is that thing that's chirping. But if you can recognize the bird that's making it without seeing it, you can be a really fantastic birder. And I think that birding is often really focused on the visuals and the birdie colors and the feathers. But Trevor's story shows that really anyone can bird, and it can be accessible to everyone.
That is really cool.
Yeah, and what I thought was really interesting about him is he kind of started with what seems like a manageable goal, which he was going to learn the bird songs of each of the official state birds of the 50 United States. That, like, learning 50 bird sounds like, okay, I think maybe that would be achievable. And then it just expanded from there to the point where he's a scientist now, right?
Or suddenly he knows them all.
Yeah, or so many of them. We're speaking with Marshall Escamilla and Lindsay Patterson from the Tumble Science Podcast. There is a foundation grant that got this podcast off the ground, specifically for people who are blind or visually impaired. And we were kind of having fun at the beginning of the show saying, you're listening to this on the radio, you do a podcast, that the whole thing that we're doing doesn't matter if you're able to see or not. We work in these audio-only mediums. But tell us about how this particular podcast came about, and you got in touch with Trevor with this grant.
Yeah, this episode is part of a series we're doing across 3 seasons. Actually, Tumble's been around for 8 years now, but we are focusing on blind scientists and the different ways in which they participate in science.
And specifically, we're sort of looking at how podcasts about blind and visually impaired scientists might impact how both blind and sighted kids see, the possibilities for blind and visually impaired learners in the realm of science.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of go through and test these in classrooms and also test how teaching kids to make podcasts based on these episodes we're producing can impact their overall sense of themselves as future, citizens or scientists or engineers or whatever.
Well, coming up, we'll take a little break here and we'll talk more with Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla from the Greenfield-based Tumble Science Podcast for kids. We might hear about how big the universe is, but we definitely want to hear about the event that's happening for free in their town of Greenfield this Saturday. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on New England Public Media.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird.
Really?
They're talking about the sounds of birds. You gotta use surfing bird.
Oh, my
Bird is a
goodness.
word.
These are the jokes that get made on our show. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We are here with the hosts of the Tumble Science Podcast for kids, Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla. You're going to be at Meltdown in Greenfield this Saturday, which is a really cool free for all kids event that's put on by several people we are acquainted with.
Yeah.
This is your second time at Meltdown, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. What are you doing that's different this time from the last time you were there? Last time I got a lunchbox. What are you bringing this time?
Oh, man. This time we have notebooks. We have colored pencils.
We have coloring pages.
Yes. I'm not in it just for the swag. I mean, it was.
You
really,
can have
really
some
cool.
swag.
Well, thank you.
We brought some
appreciate it.
swag with us.
I'm also in it for the pop quizzes and the useful information about poop and snot.
Yes.
Because that's science, everybody.
We will still be singing the our greatest musical hit, which is the Sometimes But song.
I didn't get the Sometimes But song queued up for our segment here today. I should have.
Oh, what a shame.
Oh, we weren't talking specifically about bird butts, so
Yeah. Cloaca?
Cloaca.
Cloaca.
Cloaca. Yeah, I never know how to say that one out loud. But yes, that's a bird butt, everyone.
That's a bird
Yeah.
butt. It's also a bird. Oh.
Yes, it's a bird everything. It's a multi-purpose.
They just have
multi-purpose.
one orifice.
No, they've got their mouth too.
yes.
Yeah,
But-
they got a mouth and then that.
We've also created a dance for Sometimes But, so we're trying to take it up
Right on.
to the
Yeah.
next level.
Now I really wish I had it queued up because then you could teach us the dance.
Yeah.
Which is great radio.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is something that you will be teaching at Meltdown this Saturday in Greenfield at Hawks
We
Arena.
will be doing that. We'll also be doing the line dance of life, where we teach everybody about DNA by doing a silly dance.
Wow. Do you put people into a double helix?
Oh, we got to add that now.
We'll need a lot of kids
Yes.
for that.
Yeah.
This is the perfect opportunity. You'll have a giant audience.
Yeah, if like 1.4 billion kids show up, I think we could do one
close to
strand
the
of
real-
DNA.
Yeah.
You have every kid that's got a C, a T, a G, or an A name
Yeah.
all come up and hold hands.
It's the
Exactly.
Human Genome Dance Project.
I love it.
Congratulations, you're sickle cell anemia.
Dang it.
Oh, no, kids!
That's the kind of fun you can have with Tumble Science Podcast this Saturday, April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Rain or shine right outside of Hawks and Reed on Court Square in downtown Greenfield. You are recent-ish transplants to Greenfield. What brought you to our wonderful, fabulous 413?
I think Lindsay's fond memories about going to camp out in Western Mass as a child, and my willingness to go along with it.
Yeah. Any regrets other than the loud trucks going by your house?
None. Absolutely none.
And for those who, both Khalees and I came from WRSI 93.9 The River, and this is their radio station event. I proudly helped create this event a decade plus ago, and it's the first time it's happening in Franklin County, so it's really cool that it's going to be very close to where you make your home now, right on Court Square in downtown Greenfield.
But once again,
Yeah.
it's open to everybody. You can,
Yeah, it's
anyone can go.
free and open to everybody.
You
and
don't have to live in Greenfield to go.
no, but
And-
you do have
Oh,
to
it
visit
helps.
Greenfield to go.
And I also want to add a shout out to Bill Childs, who does Spare the Rock, Spoil the Child, who was one of the original supporters of our podcast. We had a segment on his show, and when we were living in Austin, and then he said, you should be a part of this event.
Yeah.
So we were the first podcast
First
to
and
be
only.
part of
and,
Meltdown.
And still, last year was the first time a podcast was involved, and it was you, and you're a podcast involved this time, too. And there's all sorts of other fun music and events that will be part of it. There's circus, there's food and ice cream and all that. One of your most recent episodes on the Tumble Science Podcast was about how big the universe is. Can you tell us a little bit? How big is the universe?
Big.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. If you imagine an elephant, it's bigger than that.
Okay, good. Tell us about the theme of that episode and its star besides you two.
Yes, so the episode is about Henrietta Leavitt, who is one of the first computers, I'm doing air quotes, because she was hired to take down data from these photographic plates, like early photographs of the stars, and basically do everything that a computer now does automatically, but by hand.
Yeah, she was a human spreadsheet.
Yeah. And she started noticing patterns in the data between these things called variable stars, which are stars where the brightness changes over a cycle of time.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a really key piece of the puzzle of being able to figure out distance. Because, when you're looking at a star, you need to know both how bright it appears from Earth and how bright it actually is in order to figure out the distance. So they used her formula to figure out all sorts of distances to all sorts of stars. And it wound up really confusing people because it turned out that things were a lot bigger than anyone thought.
Yeah, at the time, it's really fascinating. People thought that the Milky Way was pretty much all there was to the universe.
And then they were like, Snickers, Mars bars,
Those hadn't been invented yet.
Yeah, okay.
This
Cadbury
is
cream eggs.
1905
Cadbury
we're
cream
talking
eggs.
about.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was just like an issue that like people's minds were blown by the idea that it could be bigger than that. And they were just like, no way.
And you talk about in the podcast that she was almost erased out of her important role in finding this extremely pivotal piece of science out.
Yeah, Edwin Hubble came along, who was a giant self-promoter.
Named a telescope after himself.
Yeah.
He didn't really.
Obviously,
They
we
named
know,
it after him.
No. We know Hubble's name, but Henrietta Leavitt just got, they renamed the relationship that she discovered just recently within the past 10 years after her. So it's been like a process of sort of reevaluating, the roles of different astronomers throughout history. And so she's getting her due and her credit now, but she really created what they call the first measuring stick that we could actually tell how far stars are from Earth. And before, people simply had no idea. So it really laid the foundation for modern astronomy, and everything really changed after that. And now we know the universe is expanding, so it's very hard to get a full measure because it's changing.
That's just the kind of stuff that you can learn about from the Tumble Science Podcast. It comes out twice a month, once a month?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Okay. And it's super fun. It's, I listened to 2 on my commute down here today. So they're also fun 20-ish minute long podcasts. They're
Bite-sized.
Bite-sized, lots of fun talk about butts and poop and things that we brought before, but also, really important things about making sure that people get the credit that they deserve for creating these incredible formulas. And you can meet Marshall and Lindsay in person this Saturday as part of Meltdown, the Rivers Free Family Music and Book Bash. I'm just so used to saying that. I've been saying it for 10 years, just like that. From 10 to 3 at Hawks and Reed outside Hawks and Reed, and then on the Common as well at Court Square in downtown Greenfield.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for coming in here today, making the trip from Springfield to Greenfield, and I will see you at least on Saturday at Meltdown. Later in the show, have you ever been stranded on an airport runway and feel like you could run faster than the plane is taxiing? Well, you're in luck. You can run down a runway in Northampton this weekend, and we'll talk with the folks from the first ever Runway 5K.
But up next, the Word Nerd and words that look backwards in time. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
And the Sometimes Butt song.
Dingle.
You said dingle.
To the
Yes.
dingle. Yeah, what is that? What does that mean?
It's a park.
I thought it was like an idiom.
Oh.
It's been growing wild to the dingle.
Oh no.
You're going to add it to the dictionary.
Oh yeah, that's all it takes. Oh, to the dingle.
To the dingle. Yeah, I didn't know that parks were called dingles until moving back to Western Mass.
Wait.
Mary's
This is
Dingle
still
in
new to me.
Northampton. And I'm like, what? That park on Crescent Street. I'm like, that's a dingle? That's not what I think of when I think of dingles. Then I went to the neighborhood like association meeting, who are super, super cute. And like they all noticed that I was a new face. So they were like, where do you live? Oh, that really cute cottage that abuts the dingle. And I'm like, what?
See how well behaved I'm being in this conversation between you two?
We define dingle as a small wooded valley, a dell.
Oh, like the singer.
Like farmer in the...
Oh.
No.
And not
dell.
this computer that has been giving me hell for the last 10 minutes.
Which
either.
is actually the homonym joke I was going to make to you, because somebody had a thread going, and one of the lines was, Adele isn't even a computer. Monte just gave me the look that I usually give him. I feel like I
wow.
won today.
Yeah, you
You
totally
win
did.
the day.
Dude, you're getting it down.
Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary down the street in Springfield. People love nostalgia, especially when it comes to words and all things retro. That's why we're going to talk about retro words, retronyms. Or am I completely wrong?
Yes, I mean, no, you're not wrong at all. Retronyms, it's a category of word, right? A retronym it's usually a compound term that is created to name an older or an original version of something.
So this
for
isn't
instance,
like old-timey words like dingle that we would use.
Or
and
penny
just-
farthing.
Yeah, just for fun, because it's retro, like a 1950s style diner in 2023. This is an actual type of word construction.
That's right. And it's a word that actually names something that is kind of retro, or that is maybe on its way to becoming retro. So, a classic example is acoustic guitar. There were, for how long? There were guitars. Guitars existed. Everybody just calls them guitars, except for all the other names that are used for instruments that are also basically guitars. But aside from that, we had guitars. And then electric guitars got invented. And then the thing that everybody had been referring to simply as guitar became an acoustic guitar.
Which is weird, because technically all guitars are acoustic if they make sound, because acoustic, I believe, means something akin to of or pertaining to
But
sound.
then now there's also silent guitars too, so we have to make a distinction.
There's also air guitars.
Yes.
Yes. So retronyms are all about making distinctions where there didn't used to be a need for a distinction, or where a need just hadn't been recognized before.
And is one of the driving factors behind most retronyms technology and advancements therein?
Yeah, I would say that's a safe generalization to make, but not always. One of my favorite retronyms is British English.
Oh.
Well, we just had Patriots Day the other day, so we know why that has come about, I suppose.
English started in Great Britain, in what is now called Great Britain. And that language is definitely English. But as English, ventured out across the seas and got established in all these other places, not just the United States, we had to have a way of referring to that first English.
Does Merriam-Webster consider itself an American English dictionary? Does it make that distinction in the way it identifies? Like Oxford English Dictionary would be an English dictionary or a British English dictionary, right?
Yeah, we are. We do cover English as used in some other places when a word has made significant inroads into American English. So the short answer to your question is yes. We are primarily an American English dictionary. We do cover vocabulary from other kinds of English also. The term retronym has solid NPR roots. It was actually coined by Frank Mankiewicz, who was a former president of National Public Radio.
Yay.
Was he a linguist? How did he use it? What was the context with which he coined this word?
Well, he was a journalist, and he just noticed these words and came up with the term retronym. It takes that retro prefix, which means going back, and the onym means name in Greek, or it comes from a Greek root meaning name. And so he put it together, and it's a perfectly good coinage, and it does the job really well. But he used to keep a list of these retronyms for his own use, and then somehow it got out that he had this list and that he had coined this term for these words, and everybody said, "Oh, sure, that's a great word for them." And we've been talking about retronyms ever since.
I have this picture in my head of him with his list and people discovering it and him just hunching over it going, no, my precious.
I hope he wasn't ashamed. There's nothing shameful in coining a word like retronym. There are definitely worse things you can do linguistically.
Oh, yes, for sure.
But just being the president of National Public Radio doesn't mean you get a word in the dictionary. Some people had to start using that word retronym probably in published and edited text, as you like to say, before Merriam-Webster would acknowledge it as a word in the dictionary. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
What are some of your other favorite retronyms? Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster in Springfield.
I really like food retronyms because they can be surprising.
Oh.
Like, black tea is a retronym. So is whole milk.
Yes, right. Even when I was a kid, milk was milk. Now there's like almond milk and things that aren't milk, but whole milk in particular was all that there was until the 2% and skim milk phase.
We were always 2%ers. I didn't realize there was a difference.
We were always whole milkers, and then we got 2%, and we went down to skim, and now I'm 100% whole milk all the time, or raw milk.
Skim tastes weird.
Yeah, it tastes like water.
Even 1%, like my partner drinks 1%, and it tastes weird to me. It's 2% or whole I can't go. You have to leave the fat in.
Yeah.
Are you a lactose intolerant home, Emily Brewster, or do you have a preferred milk percentage?
We drink whole milk, and we just call it red milk because the cap is always red.
Right. Yep.
Another good food retronym is free-range chicken. That one's a little bit sad.
That is sad.
Oh, I suppose that applies to eggs also, yes.
Yeah. And then there's regular coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Which means something different if you order it at Dunkin' Donuts. If you order a regular coffee
I've done
at
that.
Dunkin' Donuts,
it's a terrible mistake.
It means you're going to get it with cream and sugar. And other coffee shops in Massachusetts and New England as well, a regular coffee has cream and sugar in it, as opposed to what you're talking about, which would be not decaf coffee, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
When did this terrible turn of events happen?
It's been as my entire life, actually. I think if you were to talk to my parents and even my grandparents' generation, do you want your coffee regular? They would mean with cream and sugar.
The first time that was very shocking and unpleasant for me. The first time I got a regular coffee at Dunkin' Donuts and it had cream and sugar in it.
Well, probably
because I do not
Dunkin'
want
Donuts,
the sugar.
But...
Yeah,
we're allowed to disparage? Okay,
sure,
I haven't.
Even if they were a sponsor, I would still say not a fan of Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Yeah.
America gets the runs on Dunkin'.
Oh, wow.
But suffice it to say, if you want coffee that has caffeine in it, do not order a decaf coffee, but also don't order a regular coffee at a drive-thru because you're going to get it with cream and sugar. I like my coffee with caffeine and just black. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Black coffee also then would be a I guess that's a retronym also.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Black coffee. Sometimes instead of retronyms, there's another linguistic tendency that people have, and they will say the kind of our other option is to do something called reduplication. So we might say like, I just want a cup of coffee. Like, don't give me decaf. I just want coffee.
Yeah, I like
or
that.
I just want milk. If I mean like the standard one, the one that everybody knows this is the real one, which is not an accurate way of thinking about it. So that's kind of our other option. But the retronym is more pointed, more precise, and clearer. It's just it's a clearer way of communicating what exactly you're referring to, as opposed to just coffee.
Which of course is black coffee.
Yes. Or pizza, which is Little Caesars.
Right. Don't get it.
Pizza.
It's not very good.
This will be 2 national pizza chains that we've trashed this week.
And nearly a third for the locals.
Yeah, we just threw in Dunkin' Donuts to trash them as well.
Yeah.
The Departed. Were you in The Departed? I met Damon.
No, I love him. Love him.
I mean, some of his work.
He's had a really consistent career, I think.
Yeah. Time for a Dunkin' run.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for all this. You two.
You don't have to do the trashing.
Wait, where's
Okay.
that? People at this point should understand that we have opinions.
Here's one I really like. This season is still a bit of a way off, but as we see spring coming, there is hope of having corn on the cob. Corn on the cob is really a retronym. Like, it's on the cob. That's just how it grows.
Which is interesting, though, because I think a lot of times corn was used for meal. So then it was taken off the cob and it was still called corn. But then people deciding to eat it on the cob, they had to come up with this name for it because they had been so frequently taking it off the cob, which you would think that corn would be just corn on the cob. Mm-hmm. And then corn off the cob would be the name, but no.
Yeah. In all of these cases, people are coining terms. And it's usually an open compound, right? It's usually like two words put together with a little space in between. But we're coining these terms to find a way to make a distinction. And we don't want to stray too far. So you don't give it like a brand new word, right? You don't call it, I don't know, like cornifica or something if it's on the cob, right? You have to call it something that makes sense, that is these retronyms they just develop really organically. That's just how organic farming, there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Although I can think of one, there's one staring at me right now. We have our phones, which are usually things that we keep in our pockets at this point, but I'm looking at a landline.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
No one would have ever called that a landline in 1987.
No.
They would have just called it a phone.
Yes.
Right.
What are some of your other favorite retronyms there, Word Nerd?
I like live music.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful how, there's a simplicity to them where they're so integrated now, this distinction, and you don't even think about how we had to come up with new terminology.
Right. But for millennia, there was only live music.
Right.
There was no hopes of hearing music that was not live. Yeah, I like that one a lot. I recently had to sign a document, or, now it used to be that if you had to sign a document and you weren't in the same room with the person, you would have to sign it and you would have to fax it to them. And now you can do an electronic signature, but if they want you to actually sign it with ink, now it's called a wet signature.
Whoa.
Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you wet sign something. That's a legal term. Yeah.
Oh, no. No.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do that when it's snowing outside. I don't think that's a legally binding document, though.
I was going to say...
I don't think either of us have any idea what you're talking about.
I know what he's talking about, and we were... Yeah, no.
Oh.
Yeah, you got it, didn't you?
Oh, I do.
Right. Look, I didn't come up with the name wet signature. You did, Merriam-Webster.
You sign your name? No, Merriam-Webster did not come up with that. Oh, here's another one I like. Outdoor rock climbing.
That one feels very sad to me.
A lot of these feel really sad to me.
I don't even care about rock climbing, but that one in particular seems really sad to me for some reason. I don't know why. That you would have to differentiate that. I have no problem with an indoor rock climbing gym, but the fact that we have to clarify it in that way means that the indoor rock climbing gym is winning right now as opposed to the actual
I don't know
outdoors.
if it really means that.
Not everybody has access to outside in the same way.
That's true.
Some people live in the plains and there's no rocks.
Right.
Right.
It's too flat.
And also sometimes it's not suitable weather to do it, and you want to continue developing your rock climbing skills.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Or like me, maybe you're afraid of being out climbing random rocks.
Oh, definitely.
It seems more comforting to be climbing designed
I'm fine
rocks.
climbing the rocks. It's the rappelling that gives me trouble. I'm like a cat. Getting up there is no problem. And then I get up there and I have instant regrets. And it's like, okay, well, I live here now.
Yeah, it feels better to do it in an indoor setting for sure in that regard. So I guess you win outdoor rock climbing.
All right, here's another one that's a little bit sad. You probably are going to think it's sad. Natural light.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Although, in our new offices on Hampden Street in Springfield, we have a lot more natural light in our office space. I can see the trains at Union Station as they're coming in and out.
You can feel the trains at Union Station.
You can hear them everywhere. In the building.
It makes up for the fact that my lovely house does not get any light inside of it, really.
You mean the one right near the dingle?
The one right near the dingle. Up next, we chat with the folks who on this Sunday will turn an airport runway into a proper racetrack for humans, all to raise money for the Treehouse Foundation, who are re-envisioning foster care and community living in East Hampton. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. If you park in a driveway and drive in a parkway, can you run on a runway?
Yes, but only this Sunday morning and only at the Northampton airport, where they're going to be closing it to airplanes and opening it for runners. The first annual Runway 5K, sponsored by Treehouse Foundation of East Hampton, will straighten and flatten the traditional 5-kilometer race. The first of its kind in Western Mass is already filled to capacity with 270 entrants.
But if you were so inclined, you could still support those entrants who are running to support the work of Treehouse Foundation. And joining us from Treehouse, not the brewery, let us say, is Julie Kumble, Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Treehouse Foundation. And joining us from the Northampton Airport is Holly Lurgio, Director of Marketing and Programming at the Northampton Airport. I have so many airport-related questions. Like, are you programming, like, which planes go in and out of the airport? Is that what programming is?
No, that is not what
That's not your thing.
Yeah. We're working on, we offer positions for students to take flight lessons.
Wow.
We offer scholarships to young ladies who are interested in aviation. We offer summer camps. So that's the kind of programming that I work on.
Wait, flight summer camps?
Yeah.
That sounds like the most fun.
Yes. Yeah. We did it for several years and then took a little break during COVID.
Makes sense.
And, so this summer's our first one back. We're doing a STEM and aviation camp for 12 to 15-year-olds.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Team up with our friends at Tumble Science Podcast.
Ooh,
Maybe
seriously.
they're
Yeah, I
talking to
think
kids
you
about
absolutely
STEM.
should.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. And so, Julie, from Treehouse, tell us what Treehouse is. I have full disclosure, I have a long relationship with Treehouse and have done a lot of events with you. And I'm a huge admirer of the style of what you're doing in regards to foster care and how it seems extremely innovative. But for those who aren't familiar with it, tell us what it's all about.
Thanks, Monte. So Treehouse Foundation, not brewery.
Although I've tried to ask the Treehouse Brewery to make a beer to support the Treehouse Foundation.
Thank
So
you.
I publicly say this again. Come on, Treehouse Brewery.
I mean,
Come on.
Treehouse at Treehouse is just easy to do,
Yeah.
right? Well, whatever.
It's a natural partnership.
We're not allowed
Beer,
to
kids.
campaign for this.
So we are a nonprofit, Treehouse Foundation, and our whole mission is to ensure that children and youth who've experienced foster care are really surrounded and rooted in family and community, so that they don't have any risk of aging out alone, which is unfortunately a really common trajectory for kids who've experienced foster care. And, we support them in all sorts of ways through education, social, emotional leadership, those kinds of things. And then we also work on foster care innovation and really changing the foster care narrative. And that's on a broader national scope. And I can talk about both of those, but what we do in East Hampton with the Treehouse Foundation, as you know, because you've been there, Monte, and I hope you come out too, Kelly, is a intergenerational community. So it's this planned neighborhood that's been there since 2006. We have 120-ish community members who live there, 12 families who are in some process of adopting or have adopted kids from foster care, and then 48 older adult cottages that are all sprinkled throughout so that everybody's really engaging in each other's lives. We call these older adults the honorary grandparents. They tutor, they mentor, they help in the garden, they help in the kitchen. And then the families are there. And so the kids really are surrounded by caring, loving people and rooted in family. And, the outcomes really speak to the power of community and intergenerational supports, because the kids are not ever returned to the foster care system. We have 0% of that happening.
What's the percentage? What's like the average percentage though? So that people can see the
difference in what happens.
Yeah. So it's I need to actually get that number from you. But I'll tell you one thing. How many kids can you say in, general public schools have a 95% high school graduation or 95 to 100% college attendance or vocational? It's really, really atypical for the kids who've been in foster care to feel successful in their educational pursuits. They've had a lot of traumas that make being in, a new school, it leads to challenges, really, to succeed in education. And at Treehouse, that is not the story. So I should have that at the tip
Don't
of
worry
my
about
fingers.
it. It's a lot, and it's not at a treehouse. It's like
Exactly.
it's taken the whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child and just created a literal village in East Hampton at the foot of Mount Tom. It's this beautiful place with a gorgeous view of the mountain and this, great common areas and gazebo and things like that.
And I really hope your music cafes come back at some point because those were really wonderful. But how did you get the idea to run with airplanes?
Or without airplanes, where airplanes usually
I mean, there
run.
are airplanes still there. I'm assuming you're not moving all the airplanes away. They're going to be there. They're just not going to be active. And so maybe you have something you can catch while you're running. That's my brain.
The runway will be closed for a chunk of time in the morning. And our flight school airplanes will still be there. They'll be moved off to the side. But, yeah, there'll be some really cool airplanes to see that day. Lots on display, lots for people to grab great photos. And
World War II era planes and that Snoopy and the Baron kind of
Baron.
plane. Yeah, exactly.
Are they coming just for this event to like show off their cool planiness, or they're always there?
They're always there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
You got to come and visit.
I know.
Yeah.
And you brought these cool hats. And we're speaking with Holly Lurgio, who's from the Northampton Airport, and Julie Kumble from Treehouse Foundation, who are hosting this Runway 5K this Sunday to benefit the great work that you just heard about. All the runners are full for this first ever event, but you can still support those runners. They have an $80,000 goal by go to pledgereg.com if you want /runway 5K, or you can check them out at the treehousefoundation.net. You brought these hats that have planes on it, and then the number is 7B2.
B is not a number.
Yes, it is. It's the second number of the alphabet.
Oh, wow.
Quick.
What does 7B2 mean besides you sunk my battleship?
So that is our airport identifier. All airports have one. It's just the one that is associated with Northampton Airport.
Is there a reasoning behind it or a logic that you understand? It's just
No.
like 413.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's called that.
Right.
Don't ask me. I just live here.
There might be, but you asked a good question. Like, how did we come up with this idea? Because Holly and I are sitting here in your studio, and there's a whole team that's been working so hard on this event. Gia Collins and Andrea Bacon were sitting together going, we really want to do a 5K benefit for Treehouse. They've been super supportive of Treehouse, along with others, names that I'm not going to go through right now, but a really fantastic team of people and business sponsors. And their husbands were in this conversation, and Andrea and Bob Bacon are owners of the airport. And I think it was Bob who said, let's just do it down the runway. Let's just clear the runway and have folks run or walk down the runway, and then the course loops around. So the runway itself isn't 5K, but part of it is. So that generosity and that, spirit has just been permeating throughout this whole planning process.
Is this a unique event in the world, or is this something that other airports do elsewhere?
Other airports do it, but no one's going to do it like we're doing it. I mean, let's be honest.
It is Northampton, after all.
Yes, that's right.
You're the first airport I've heard about doing it.
Okay, good.
So there's that. And I'm assuming that it would need to be like smaller, like community airports too that do it, because larger ones, like clearing all of that space would be just difficult, and then TSA issues and like possible security risks. But like, let's just talk a little bit about how like smaller community airports are really important, especially in like things like this where they get to, clear off the runway so that we can run a fundraiser for other community organizations, like that sort of connectedness.
Yeah. The general aviation airports community is very important. It's important within the community of the airport. The people who rent hangars there, and the flight students and the flight school. That's all extremely important. There are people who have hangars, most people who have their hangars that are set up, with their airplane in there, but it's also like a little living room. They've got couches and rocking chairs, and some will come and sit there and open their hangar door and just sit there all day and read or watch airplanes or
play music.
Yeah, play music. Yeah, there are some that have little bands, and but that community piece is really important, and everyone at the airport has been like all in behind this particular event. we hold other events, but this is a biggie for us, and it just kind of fits with our mission and our values at the airport with Treehouse.
I can only imagine that some of the kids are definitely going to want to go and hang out at the airport after this event if they don't already.
Yeah, you have some future pilots on your hands that are coming.
We do, and we have a kids table with fun activities. A to Z, the kids store in Northampton donated these kites for kids to get, who have registered. Yeah, so it really is, like Holly said, a community event. And I remember, years ago, my brother-in-law and his wife and their 2 adopted boys from foster care flew from Oregon to this airport, all the way, stopping in a small airplane all the way across the country. So it's kind of a nice full circle with foster care, the airport, kids. It's all coming home.
We're speaking with Julie Kumble, the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Treehouse Foundation, and Holly Lurgio, the Director of Marketing and Programming at the Northampton Airport. The first ever Runway 5K, sponsored by the Treehouse Foundation, a benefit for Treehouse Foundation. They're trying to raise $80,000. All the runners are set, but you can go find out and support those runners at pledgereg.com/runway5k. As I mentioned, I'm really inspired by the nature of the way Treehouse handles foster care and community living. Treehouse has inspired other organizations to do similar type community living spaces, right?
Yeah, that is definitely true. We inspire, we teach, we educate how to replicate the Treehouse model, whether the focus is foster care innovation or maybe it's another group. I know one of our groups that have come to us are interested in creating a community for kids with autism. And so, yes, we have Treehouse-inspired communities that are on their way. And we are actually replicating our own Treehouse model in Boston. So we have shovels going into the ground in 2024. And then families and folks are going to start moving in 2026. So it's super exciting for us.
Is it going to be similar size to the one in East Hampton? There's 200 something you said?
120 in East Hampton.
120 in East Hampton, okay.
Yeah, it's similar size. One of the things we're doing differently, though, is having housing for young adults who would otherwise age out.
Because when you turn 18, the foster care system
is like, you're done, you're an adult.
You're an adult now, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And this is where organizations like Treehouse Foundation and other great organizations, even here in Western Mass, are trying to support them beyond that. Because as most people know, when you're 18, you're legally an adult and that's it.
That's one of those beautiful bridging things because, like, in so many aspects of many people's lives, like, you reach this ledge and then all of a sudden there is just no support for you. So it's wonderful to see those bridges being built within communities to keep people more stable so that they in turn can come to build more community for other folks later.
Yeah.
Just paying it forward in a way.
Totally.
Holly, from the airport, in about the last minute we have, do you get to fly, as somebody who works at the airport, to all places that we all have to drive to? Like, could you fly from Northampton?
Do I get to envy you because I wear glasses and I can't learn?
No, you can.
We're asking you so many questions.
You can learn. Most of our pilots fly sort of locally, but there are a lot of trips, in the summer and not even summer, just on a beautiful day, people will, go to Nantucket to get a good burger or,
How long does it take to go from Northampton to Nantucket by plane?
It's like 45 minutes.
Come on.
Man.
Also, has anyone at the Northampton airport gotten one of those kits where you build the plane yourself?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and actually one of those airplanes is going to be on display.
Really?
We might need to go do a segment at the Northampton airport and then also go to Nantucket and
and then stop at Treehouse Brewery and ask them to sponsor.
Well, thank you so much, Holly Lurgio, the Director of Marketing and Programming at the Northampton Airport, and Julie Kumble, Director of Strategic Partnership at Treehouse Foundation. The first annual Runway 5K this Sunday. You can find out more by going to treehousefoundation.net or go to pledgereg.com/runway5k. Thursday, tomorrow, is 420. And on the Fabulous 413, we'll talk about the business of cannabis and striving for equity in the industry with Peyton Shubrick from Six Bricks Cannabis in Springfield, a black, female-owned pot shop.
We'll have a preview of Shout, Elevate, Inspire, an evening of poetry, music, and theater supporting youth, voices, and social justice at Springfield Technical Community College this weekend.
And McGoverning with McGovern, Congressman Jim McGovern. Got a question for the congressman? You can email it to us at thefab413@nepm.org.
Our director is Tony Three-Way Sandwich Dunn.
Our engineer is Betsy, found the sometimes but song Cordis.
And so quickly, our technical team is Bart, you should eat the spare muffin Rankin, Kara wishing she could find her rubber mallet Foster, and Punk Dubé Rob Boy. Rude Boy.
Musical thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, The Beatles, Fred Eaglesmith, The Slip, Treefort, Adele. I'm Monte Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll see you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.